Hey guys, so welcome back to another IGCSE video where today we will be discussing the 2025 paper for section A. And if you want to check out section B, you can check out our other video. Okay, so for section A, there will be a case study and you can pause the video to read it if you haven't already. And we'll just get started with the questions. Okay, so part A is relatively straightforward. You have to calculate the current account deficit on the balance of payment of Romania's. So, and they already gave you a table in the first part of the case study. So, what you have to do is you look at the first two values of this table. The first one is the current account deficit and it's a percentage of GDP. So it's 9% of GDP, and the next one will be GDP. So it's 9% of 300 billion. And you can leave the answer in billions. So I just take 9% of 300 to give you 27 billion. But of course you can make it 9 zeros, but it's just harder and you might have some errors. So I feel like it's easier to leave it in billions. Okay, part B. Identify two reasons why Romania's population fell between 1990 and 2022. Okay, so you can find the answer in the case study and it's in the highlighted part. So the country's birth rate and death rate both fell over this period. So because their birth rate fell between 1990 and 2022, so that's why their population fell. Okay, so the second reason will be that more Romanian workers left the country to work, which is why their population fell. Okay, part C. Explain why immigration into Romania may increase in the future. Okay, so just find the answer from the paragraph, and it's probably after the paragraph that we just looked from. So the next paragraph, they say that fewer of its people may emigrate and more immigrants may be attracted. Okay, so if the Romanian economy continues to grow at a very high rate, which is also what they said here, if the Romanian economy continues to grow at its relatively high rate, that means more immigrants may be attracted to live in Romania. And this may be because high economic growth usually signifies a very prosperous future, and which is a future that people are more confident in. Because high economic growth is usually associated with better living standards or higher income and increased job opportunities. So obviously people from other countries, they may be more attracted to come into Romania. So this is why immigration into Romania may increase. Okay, part D. Explain two reasons why household spending has increased in Romania. Okay, so in the next sentence, it says that Romanians have become wealthier, more confident about their future, and have experienced low interest rates. So there's three reasons that they gave, and you can just pick two of them, but I'll just explain all three. So Romanians have become wealthier. So that means that they have higher income to spend on. So that's why household spending can increase. And then there's also increased confidence about their future. So that means there's higher confidence towards the future of Romania. And this will encourage more borrowing, which also increases household spending because now they have more money to spend on. Okay, so the third reason would be low interest rates. And if the Romanians experience low interest rates, this means that it encourages borrowing because borrowing money becomes cheaper. And it discourages saving because now you don't get much from saving your money in the bank. Yeah, that's why household spending will increase. Okay, part E. Draw a demand and supply diagram to show the effect of setting a maximum price on electricity. Okay, so now I'm showing a pretty good diagram, I would say, but it's missing a few parts. So, okay, I'll just say like what's pretty good about this diagram is that they label all the axes, so the price and the quantity, they're both labeled correctly. And then the demand and supply diagram is obviously drawn correctly and labeled correctly. And then there's the maximum P max. This is also drawn correctly with the quantities labeled as well. So it's pretty good. But okay, so the problem is that they didn't label the maximum price for this the price line. Like, of course it's very important to write P max here. Is like, instead of writing just P, you have to write P max to indicate that it's a maximum price. And the other thing that's wrong about this diagram is that they did not label the maximum price, because as you can see from here, you have to label the supply and demand curve, but you did not label this line. So what you have to do is you have to label it as maximum price, and then obviously on the axis, because it intersects the axis, so you have to write P max. Yeah, so this diagram will be correct. Like, obviously you may still like get away with not writing maximum price for this diagram, but if you really want to try and maximize your scores, I would suggest you just like make sure everything's correct, and like there's no loopholes for examiners to say like, no, I will just -1 mark. So just make sure you include every single thing in this diagram. Make sure you write P max instead of just P, and make sure you label this as maximum price, and of course make sure you write QS and QD here. Okay, yeah. And if you do all these, it's relatively easy to get the 4 marks here. Okay, part F. Analyze the relationship between GDP per head and average spending on food as a percentage of total household spending. Okay, so this table is also from the case study. It's the second table, I believe. And so for analyzed questions, there's a specific format that you have to follow. And if you're not familiar with it, I suggest you watch one of our previous videos. But yeah, you just have to make sure you cover the relationship, the evidence, and analysis of the evidence, and then some exceptions. Okay, so for the relationship between GDP per head and the average spending, you can look at the table first. So you can like just, I don't know, look and observe, and you will find that these two variables have a negative relationship. So as GDP per head increases, the average spending on food as a percentage of the total household spending will decrease. Okay, so some examples. So you can look at Ethiopia. They have the lowest GDP per head, which is just at $960. And then they have the highest average household spending at 56%. So if you compare it with Cambodia, they have the second lowest GDP per head and also the second highest average household spending. So obviously it follows the relationship, which is negative relationship. Okay, so now we have to explain the negative relationship. So as the income or the GDP increases, households will start to spend more on other items, not just basic necessities. They'll start to buy goods like luxury goods or like merit goods. So that means that as their income increases, they spend a lower proportion on food and basic stuff. So that's why there's a negative relationship. And some exceptions that you can find from this table is that Norway and USA, but we can just focus on one. So Norway is an exception. So they have the highest GDP per head, but they do not have the lowest average spending on food. because if you look at this, USA actually has the lowest. So you can give a reason as to why Norway may be an exception, and it may be because the food in Norway is just like more expensive. Yeah. Okay, part G. Discuss whether or not foreign MNC, multinational companies, reduce poverty in their host countries. Okay, so we'll discuss questions. You have to talk about both sides of the argument. So, foreign MNCs may reduce poverty in their host country, or they may not reduce poverty in their host country. So, for the first part, why may foreign MNCs reduce poverty in their host country? They could provide more jobs for local residents, which will in return reduce unemployment in the host country and increase income, so it will reduce poverty. Or the company may pay tax, and the tax can be used by the government to provide education or like worker retraining programs to make sure like workers will get jobs, and this will also reduce poverty. And with better education, you're more likely to be employed, and like you're less likely to be in poverty. Or the multinational companies, they may train workers, so like they come into the country and they offer new jobs, then they will train the workers, which will then increase the skills of the population, and this will allow the population to be more like occupationally mobile, which is just like overall is better for the economy, because the population, they will start to become more and more skilled, and they can start to pass along their skills to the next generation, and over time this will reduce poverty. Okay, so the next part would be why they may not reduce poverty in the host country. So these companies, they may choose to employ more workers from their own country, so they could be a bit more biased to their own people instead of like employing people from the host country. So this may not solve poverty in the host country. Yeah. Or the companies, they could use capital intensive methods of production. So like foreign MNCs, they tend to be quite good, like they're quite advanced, they have a lot of resources, a lot of capital, so they may choose to use machines instead because it's like advanced technology. So this will mean that they don't actually have a lot of demand for workers. They won't really solve unemployment in the host country, so this will not reduce unemployment and will not reduce poverty. Or the companies, they could send their profits back home, so there wouldn't be any reinvestment back into the host country, so this doesn't really reduce poverty. So like the host country will just kind of be in the same spot, they won't improve. Okay, and you can find like some reasons to talk about in the case study if like you're not sure where to get started from. Okay, part H. Discuss whether or not a higher proportion of women is likely to enter Romania's labor force in the future. Okay, so this extract is taken from the case study. Okay, so there is a range of influences on whether women enter the labor force. These include social attitudes, female education, and whether childcare facilities and part-time work are available. Okay, so discuss question again. So you talk about both sides, and a higher proportion of women is likely to enter Romania's labor force in the future. And this could be because there's an increase in female education, so like perhaps it's more important, or like they're just allowing more females to be educated. So that means that more and more females are going to be more skilled, and employers, they are more likely to employ them. And there could also be more part-time work available, and with more job opportunities or like more job slots, that means that like more women are likely to be employed since there's more spots open for them. And there could also be an increase in the amount of childcare facilities available. So this means that the women, they are not restricted to take care of their child. they're not like forced to do it because there's more like people who can care for their child, so that means that they can go back to work, or like they can just like make sure that the child is safe and just safely go to work. Because as you may know, like one of the reasons that women are not employed a lot of the times is because of their childcare responsibilities. So yeah, this will increase the proportion of women that's likely to enter the labor force. Okay, so in contrast, a higher proportion of women is not likely to enter the labor force in the future, and this may be because that there's some discrimination towards women, and this could continue in the workplace, and this would like kind of discourage women to go find work because they're not kind of being respected, and this can be quite discouraging. And there could also be an increase in income of Romanian households, and you can actually find that from like the first part. Romanians have become wealthier, so that means that there's an increase in income, right? So an increase in income of Romanian households, it may reduce the need for women to work. Okay, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful.